million people voted illegally in 2016. He has offered no valid proof of this assertion, and yet the perception has caught fire. You have expressed concern about this perception and that it will lead to a chilling effect and potentially more voter suppression, maybe more voter ID laws. If that is true, what would be wrong with that?
What would be wrong with more voter ID laws? Is that the question?
It is your choice to answer a question with a question. Yes.
What would be wrong with more voter ID laws is that the ones that exist are, in general, a violation of the U.S. Constitution. The Republican Party, by and large, has chosen to disenfranchise people in this country because of the color of their skin. That simply is not allowed by our Constitution. The courts have found that. So that's what would be wrong with more voter ID laws. As far as Mr. Trump, if he has proof of a crime, he ought to offer it. You ought to get sworn in and say, okay, here are the names of the 3 million people that I know about personally who voted. But he hasn't offered to do that, probably because those people don't exist.
Chris,
in terms of harnessing the energy here, I agree with Tom and Keith and Jamie, and I think there may have been a couple others who expressed themselves. The way to harness that energy is locally, on a 185,000 precinct basis, to locally go to the local people in the precincts and decide what issues are important to them locally and organize around those issues. And those issues they are democratic issues. They are equal pay. They're fair trade, infrastructure, protecting Social Security and Medicare.
Chris,
but that's got to be done locally. And if it's done locally, that will harness the energy that we've seen.
You're over time, Mr. Pekarsky.
Sorry about that.
I appreciate it. No, I appreciate it. Yes, but the context for this, again, was I understand why the room applauds a room of Democrats when you say voter ID laws are against the Constitution. But make the case to people who don't understand why offering an identification would be so onerous for people when they go to vote.
Well, I spent a substantial portion of my life doing these cases at the Department of Justice. Let me give you some facts and figures. We sued Texas and we won. And we won because over a 10-year period, 46 million votes were cast. Zero, count them, zero reported incidents of illegal non-citizen voting. 2 incidents of in-person voter fraud. 46 million votes cast. If we weren't on television, I would call this a word that begins with a B. I will anyway. It's bunk. And you know what? It's bunk and every other case. And if you're in Texas, you got to drive 120 miles to get an ID. If you're poor, that is a poll tax. That's what that's about, Chris. That's right. And the important thing to know about this rule, and even though my voice is a little crackly, I'm always going to be a voice for people who are disenfranchised in voter ID laws, because this is part of the Republican playbook, and they're doing it because it works. And that's why we need to make sure we are fighting this tooth and nail.
Jamu Green, let me get you in on this.
So this is one of the uncomfortable truths that we have to face as a party, because your question about Americans who think it's okay to show an ID to vote because they show an ID for many daily transactions. The majority of Democrats think that voter IDs is okay. This is why the Democratic Party has to shift the battlefield from voter suppression to voter expansion. We have to embrace universal voter registration. The bottom line is voter registration in and of itself is a barrier. We have to take the lead with online voting. We have to beat them at their own game. If we only focus on voter suppression, and the work that's happening in the courts is critical, but what we can do as a party is to shift the battlefield to make sure that we are increasing turnout.
Ms. Green, thank you. Congressman, I got a choice for you. You want 30 seconds to respond, or you want a minute for a new question?
I got to deal with this issue on
Done. Go ahead.
Fraud. You know, in Minnesota, in 2012, Republicans put on the ballot a photo ID law. And in the very beginning, people said, you know, too many people think it's good. We can't beat it. But you know what? I devoted my entire campaign to defeating it. And we got the vote out. We knocked every single door we could get. And we literally educated people on why photo ID was expensive, was excluding people, was unfair to veterans, people of color, low-income people, seniors, and at the ballot box, which is what the DNC specializes in, we defeated photo ID in 2012. It can be beat at the ballot box. It must be beat there, and the DNC chair we do